handful of NBA stars we lost and players we still think about to this day. Just what would have been different had any one of those stars been around longer? NBA history would have looked completely different. The death of Reggie Lewis left a wave of unprecedented grief in the entire world of sports. You might remember Lewis as that one player that collapsed on the court during a game. Lewis had an interesting career and life leading up to his days playing with the Boston Celtics. Lewis is remembered as one of the best players on one of the great, if not greatest, high school teams ever, Dunbar High School. That team had 4 players that would go on to make the NBA, and he was arguably the best player on a high school team that didn't lose a single game in over 2 years. It was all destined for Lewis. It was all set up for him to enter the NBA and for him to quickly become one of the best young players in the NBA. But what makes Lewis's story even more fascinating is when you begin to discover the circumstances of Lewis's early life. He was born into poverty to a single mother, Peggy Lewis. Peggy was challenged mentally and had a lifelong battle with drugs and overdose. And even while dealing with his mother, and then eventually managing his married life with a child, Lewis was still playing at an incredible level on the court. He played so well that Boston fans were hopeful for competitiveness from their team in the post-Larry Bird era. Lewis was embraced by fans of Boston organization for being the successor to Bird, someone that would help to revitalize the winning culture of the Boston Celtics. It was looking that way for a good while. The Celtics remained a fun team to watch and a threat to become the next best team in the league for years to come. Until one fateful day in 1993, Lewis was casually jogging up the court. Until he fell, he collapsed. The Celtics pulled him from the game and sent him to go get checked out. According to the medical reports Lewis received at the hospital that day, Lewis recovered some terrifying news that would seriously put his career in jeopardy. Lewis was told that he had a deadly defect in his heart. He was diagnosed with focal cardiomyopathy, a fatal condition that attacks the heart and can greatly increase the risk of heart failure. Lewis was speechless, stunned. He didn't know what to say. Doctors told Lewis that his career was over. They told him that playing basketball again could end his life. What do you do when you hear something like that? After getting second and third opinions, Lewis had a few doctors give him different information. Some doctors even gave Lewis assurance that he could return to the hard work eventually if he stayed on the medication. Uplifted by the news he heard from some specialists, Lewis decided to give it a go one day when he played a game of pickup with some friends. Just 5 minutes into their game, Lewis again collapsed on the floor. He was faint, dizzy, and lightheaded. Although he was able to be rushed to the hospital in a timely fashion, Lewis was sadly pronounced dead just hours later. He was only 27 years old, just crushing news for the Celtics and Lewis's family. The Celtics were left in years of mediocrity following the tragic death of their emerging superstar. If you're liking this video so far, dunk that subscribe button and keep watching. Another NBA star who suffered a similar fate is one of the first European players to find major success in the NBA, Drazen Petrovic. At the time of his death, Petrovic was third in the NBA in all-time three-point percentage. His game was ahead of his time, being that he was a knockdown three-point shooter in an era where shooting was not that common. Petrovic began his playing career in Croatia and joined the NBA in 1989 as a member of the Portland Trail Blazers after winning countless awards in the EuroLeague. After 2 successful seasons in Portland, Petrovic joined the New Jersey Nets and had his best season in 1993, where he was an All-Star and made the All-NBA third team, with averages of 22.3 points per game, 3.5 assists per game, and a three-point percentage of 44.9%, which was unheard of at the time. He just played the best season of his life, but was contemplating leaving the Nets after the fact that they had yet to extend his contract. He traveled to Berlin to meet with the Croatian national team and listened to contract offers from European teams to consider going back to the EuroLeague. Unfortunately, he passed away in a car accident on June 7, 1993. He was driving on the Autobahn, a famous freeway in Germany, on a rainy afternoon. He was a passenger in a car that was cut off by a semi-truck. His girlfriend was driving the car while Petrovic was asleep in the passenger seat when the accident happened. His girlfriend would be badly injured, but ended up surviving. But it was later established that Petrovic was not wearing a seatbelt when the accident occurred. Many cities in Croatia began to honor Petrovic's legacy after his death. The Cibona Stadium was renamed the Drazen Petrovic Basketball Hall on October 4, 1993 to honor Petrovic. The Nets retired his number 3 jersey as well on November 11, 1993. This death came as a huge shock to everyone. He was only 28 years old and clearly only getting started in his legendary career. "We're a country of a million," Petrovic's brother told the New York Daily News. "Without him, basketball takes 3 steps back." This was a stunning loss for the world of basketball. Another Boston Celtic makes our list, and again, we can pose the question, what if? Len Bias is the only player on this list that never actually played a single minute in the NBA. He was drafted, but he never played. So what happened? To put it into perspective just how great of a player Len Bias was, check this quote that was uttered years ago by former longtime Duke head coach Mike Krzyzewski. Coach K said, "This is my 24th year at Duke, and in that time, there have been 2 opposing players who have really stood out, Michael Jordan and Len Bias." He put Bias in the same breath as the greatest player to ever play in MJ. That's saying something. Bias was a standout phenomena at the University of Maryland. Standing at 6 foot 8 inches tall, Bias had an incredibly sound game. He was so skilled and versatile that he was effective in playing at any position, and would be the first to snag every rebound. Just a brute force of nature, unlike the NCAA or the NBA had ever seen before. Bias was so good in college that Celtics GM Red Auerbach had started making it known years before the 1986 draft that the Celtics would be drafting him. They even traded up to claim the 2nd overall pick 2 years before the draft, just so they could be sure they could land Bias. The first pick in that draft belonged to the Cleveland Cavaliers, although they ended up drafting future Hall of Famer Brad Daugherty. The Cavs, too, expressed great interest in the former College Play of the Year. But the Celtics remained so desperate for Bias that it was reported that they spread false rumors around Bias to steer the Cavs away from taking him with the first pick. Somehow, someway, it worked. The Cavs passed up on him because of the false rumors Boston perpetuated about him. The Celtics got their wish and gracefully selected Len Bias with the 2nd overall selection in the 1986 NBA draft. The league was terrified. The Celtics, who at the time were coming off their 3rd NBA championship in 5 years, just drafted the man most believed would be the consensus best player in the world at some point. Boston, of course, had the core of their dynasty intact with Bird, McHale, and Parrish. A week earlier, they hoisted the NBA trophy. Now they added Bias to the fold? Good luck to the rest of the NBA. But what would go on to transpire in the coming 48 to 72 hours would send shockwaves throughout the sports world. It had been discovered that Bias spent numerous nights out leading up to the draft. During those nights, Bias had been consuming extreme amounts of drugs. That drug overdose would end up claiming his life just days after he was drafted. This news stunned the entire NBA, but the situation helped enforce a much harsher policy on drug use in the league. The NCAA also doubled down on the regulations regarding drug use. It was an astounding turn of events. What was supposed to be the virtually unbeatable 4 of Bird, McHale, Parrish, and Len all went awry with a snap of a finger. To all these super talented players on this list, rest in paradise, Kings.